This is Gender in Focus. I'm Elle, and each week I sit down with the president of Transfocus Consulting and all-round gender diversity genius, Kai Scott. I get to ask all the questions you've ever wanted to ask about how to make the workplace and the world a better place for trans and non-binary people. Let's get into it. In 2023, Kai did a TEDx talk, and it was so good, but he doesn't talk about it enough. And I've managed to bully and persuade him to talk about it today. So I'm really excited about this one, Kai. How's it going?
Great. I'm really excited to talk about it and go a little bit deeper behind the scenes of the TEDx talk.
Can you tell us, give us an overview of what your TEDx talk was actually about?
So, in a nutshell, the talk that I did for TEDx was about trying to resolve the vast differences that exist on the topic of gender, particularly gender diversity, but really it was about gender. And I recognize that, for some it's, simple, and for others there's many more layers. And so I was trying to kind of span that gulf that I see and chasm that seems to be growing, and people being quite polarized on the topic. And I wanted to at least kind of create some sort of bridges across that chasm by telling my own story a bit, but then also offering options for folks to explore themselves, even if they're not trans or non-binary. And I wanted to make the topic more accessible and not so mired in, politics or, problematic dialogue, but really just to say it's much more simple, and we can talk across differences, even if we have different definitions of what we think gender is and how it relates to sex and whatnot. And I spoke about this because I wanted to come from like a humble place on it, because I actually started as somebody who was against trans and non-binary, really the whole 2S LGBTQI spectrum, even though it's my own identity, right? So it seems quite bizarre. I mean, I start with a vignette of me as a teenager writing a letter to the city of Abbotsford, being quite upset that we just had a session at school on the topic of 2S LGBTQIA folks, and saying emphatically that we should not have had that session. It was a gross, bad thing that just happened, right? So, and then later on, I come out as, both queer and trans. So, not to say that everybody who is resisting or pushing back against 2S LGBTQI folks are themselves. There could be a few, but all that to say that, we all have a journey on this topic of gender and sexual diversity, and to allow space for that journey to unfold. It can take many twists and turns, but really that what is happening or being shared from people of the 2S LGBTQI umbrella can be helpful even for those who are not. And so I give a few examples of that, whether it's in change rooms and washrooms or pronouns. And so I just try to unpack that a little bit in the 10 minutes that you have, which is next to nothing.
Can I ask you about kind of the process of going through your TEDx and getting that all set up? What it was like to actually prepare for that, and like the whole process of that.
Oh yeah, TEDx talks are. I'm not sure if everyone is aware that they're quite an involved process. Well, at least if with TEDx Surrey. So there's TED talks that are quite kind of more involved, but there's also these TEDx in these cities and communities and universities across the world. TEDx Surrey is very invested and have professionals that help prepare folks to have such a talk, in terms of not just the script itself, what's said, the words, but then how it's conveyed with body language and positioning on the stage and whatnot. So they it's to their credit to have like such a rigorous process for how to go
Hmm.
through that, that it produces a really good outcome. And really hats off to them, because they have professionals who give freely of their time. They volunteer, as do we as the speech people who are giving the talks. But I very much admire that and learned a lot. But it was basically every Saturday for several months, like 6 months,
Really?
like full days, right?
Oh
And
my God.
then you're assigned a mentor who then works with you on a weekly basis. And then I also connected with two fellow speech writers or TED Talk folks who are giving their TED Talks, and we practiced together too. So I think all in all, I think it was about 150 hours of my time, and I did track that because I have consulting software that allows me to track my time. But yes, it was a significant time investment. I see you're a bit surprised.
I
But
didn't expect that.
I think it's really interesting because I do a lot of public speaking. A lot of it is around education sessions,
Hmm.
and those are long, hour and a half, 2 hours, sometimes three, right? Where you can, take the time to develop a theme, a topic, or a set of topics. You can be a little bit more ad lib and, change things around. But when it comes to 10 minutes, like you got to have exactly what you're saying to
Hmm.
be as efficient as possible with the words that you're saying. So you really need to kind of memorize a script to be able to deliver that. And that takes
That's
time.
wild. Oh my
Hmm.
goodness.
It was
I
probably
just,
one of the hardest things I've done. And it
yeah.
was very disorienting as somebody who already does public speaking, where I was like, oh, yeah, I know what to do.
Mm.
And I was like, oh, yeah, I'll just kind of have 3 points in my head and kind of riff on them. And they were
Hmm.
like, no, 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 you got to memorize. And I was like, oh, okay. I didn't expect that. Thank you. And memorization, for somebody, I struggle with memory sometimes, and that was really difficult to
Mm.
memorize the script.
Yeah, I can
Yeah,
imagine. I
and
can
not have
imagine.
it feel like I'm, in my head. Like I want to be also present with the audience. So yeah, it
Hmm.
was interesting.
That's wild. Oh my goodness,
Uh,
I didn't know that. If you had like a few key points that you wanted people to really get out of your TEDx, what would you say are like the main ones?
yeah. The one thing, just to make it concrete about pronouns, I know people can sometimes be a bit disconcerted or wary of pronouns, or even maybe it's like, ugh, what's that? That's woke or something like that. Um, I mean, everybody has pronouns, so it's not like sharing pronouns is something new for folks, and some people are uncomfortable by that, or they don't quite understand the need for it. So I was trying to explain why it's helpful to share and exchange pronouns, but
Hmm.
that we're not forcing anyone to do that, because I think there's a misconception that something new is like being foisted upon folks and they must do it, and if they don't, something dire is going to happen. And
Hmm.
so just kind of unpacking some of those myths, and that it's actually an opportunity to try it out, right? To share one's pronoun and then reflect back, what was that experience like for me? Do I want to continue to do it? Do I not? Why did I respond in that way? Or, oh, it actually helps me and I didn't expect that, right? Like, people who have names that people don't know how to attribute pronouns to. Maybe it's a less common name than they're used to, and
Hmm.
that actually helps them, right? Like, so
Yeah.
they might be surprised by that. Or one of my friends has the name Lori, and typically, if it's an email exchange, they misgender him and think he's a woman, right? So he actually likes pronouns, and he's not trans, right? So
Hmm.
just getting people to realize there's a practical value to new things, and that it's just a matter of trying it out, not to have these blockages to something new. Because anytime I see something new, I'm intrigued. Even if it's not something I need. Um,
Hmm.
I'll give you a really interesting example, or maybe it's not. It's interesting to me. I don't have a sense sensitivity. I don't really think about it. Maybe sometimes, like today, I stepped into the elevator and somebody with their perfume, I was just like, oh my gosh, it's like so much. But on the whole, can navigate the world with scent. But I have friends who have scent sensitivities. And so, and they ask, when they're going to come over, what kind of scents I have. And I've gradually shifted to be scent free. Like, I don't have to do that for me, but I was curious about it. And once I started on it, I realized, ooh, this actually really helps me too. I didn't realize
Mm-hmm.
how, there was maybe quite a bit of scent and very conflicting scents in my home, and that it's kind of brought it down. And so it's interesting that it's in response to somebody else's need, but that actually helped me too, So it's not until you take that journey that you know what that is for you. And that's just inviting people on that journey of trying something new, even if they don't actually need it, but that could be of value to them. Or
Mm-hmm.
it could be really clarifying. Like, we hear a lot from cisgender women or non-trans women that they try sharing their pronouns, but it feels like they're overemphasizing their gender in the workplace. Totally fair. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's not always a great time being a woman in the workplace. So, but that was really important insight by trying and realizing that, and then going forth from there, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, just trying to illustrate that new doesn't necessarily mean, um, I need to ignore or resist, but just like being open and curious.
You've mentioned a couple of times in conversations that I've had with you
Yeah.
about how what you wanted to talk about was bigger than you had time for. You only had 10 minutes and you really had to really cut out or reduce what you were saying. So what did you leave out that you didn't have time for
Mm.
but were just you wish if you'd had longer you would have put in?
Right. And this is where we get into my 1 hour TEDx talk. Just kidding. No, no, no.
Yeah. Get
I
your
won't.
coffee, everyone, and yeah, sit back.
Yeah, exactly. So there was one critical point that I wanted to bring in that I too am working on my assumptions, right? So a lot of the time when I deliver education sessions or a TEDx talk like this, it's talking about allies and how they can work on assumptions they make. But anytime I ask something of another person, I also bring it back to me to say, hey, are you working on that too? Right? Because that's
Mhm.
not fair of me just to be like, go forth and don't do assumptions. And then I'm here assuming till kingdom come, right? So I one of the stories that I wanted to illustrate this to say, hey, I'm suggesting this to you, but I'm also working on this, is a story about an education session that I did in person several years ago, where I went into a room and there was somebody who was in PPE, right? So that like personal protective equipment, a hard hat and all of these things, and had tattoos and various other things that kind of looked a little rough in my mind, right? And I will say, I I feel a little self conscious saying this, but I did immediately jump to a conclusion about this person. And I said, oh boy, I think I'm going to have to brace myself for, trouble in this education
Mhm.
session. And there's a bit of like armoring that happens when I think those thoughts. And then we proceed with the education session. And then at one point, this person raises his hand and starts to talk. And I was like, oh no, how am I going to handle this? Just a million things racing through my mind. But then he started to share a story about uh, growing up and being in ballet, and that he was made fun of for wanting to be or doing ballet, and was really understands how gender is very limiting, and
Mhm.
that we aren't free to do whatever we want without recourse or some sort of cost to that. That he lost friends. It was like really touching, beautiful story about his pursuit of ballet, and it just like I was corrected in that moment, clearly, that I had made a very incorrect assumption purely based on how somebody looked, which is exactly what I tell people not to do with trans people. So I was like, I too need to, work on my assumptions and not have it be only based on somebody's exterior. And that goes for trans people, that goes for cis people, and everyone can do it. And it's something that takes a minute to unpack. And so now, anytime I see people of all kinds of different things, I try to keep an open, clear mind. This could be anybody. Um, on any type of journey on this topic, and I just want to be open, and then I respond from whatever they say or do, and then we can continue to connect on that. But that was really a big pivot moment where I was like, oh, I got to work on myself too.
That's so relatable.
Mm-hmm.
I think we've probably all done that to some degree.
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah,
And I'm so
that's
glad
interesting.
that he shared his story, because it really, I think, probably along with what I was saying, just beautifully illustrated that we all, or not all of us, but a lot of us can be trapped by societal expectations around gender. And it does a disservice to all of us, in that by working on trans issues and other issues, we can start to kind of hopefully free ourselves to pursue what we actually want to do. And it might look a little different from others, but that's okay.
So before we go, can I ask you about any advice you might have for somebody who is wanting to deliver something like this, like whether
Mm.
it's a kind of keynote or a talk in this way, if you had some top advice
Mm.
for everyone?
Ooh, that's a good one. Yeah, there's so much that I could say on this. Certainly, being aware of the investment. Not every TEDx is set up exactly how Surrey does it. They put a lot of, or they expect a lot of time investment, which I appreciate, because they want a high caliber. Other cities do it differently. And so just being aware of what the approach that is taken wherever you're at. Uh, Also, being able to say something very clearly and concisely and accessibly. I One of the humbling things is that I can sometimes speak in an inaccessible way, and it really helped me to learn how to say things in a way that more people can understand. And just realizing how much of a barrier I was putting up between myself and the audience. So being able to kind of really boil down something that maybe if it's really complex, it doesn't need to be that complex, and really simplifying something, even though at least for me, it was like, oh, but it is so complex and we should keep it complex. And I'm like, well, for a TEDx talk, especially 10 minutes, you really can't get it into any detail. And really, it's just an opening to then be able to go into detail by connecting on other things, right?
Right.
Whether through Transfocus or personally on social media, whatnot. So not thinking that this has to be the end all be all. It's just the beginning, right? And that kind of takes off some of that pressure of having to pack everything, because like I had packed everything into my talk, and it was so dense that people are like, I don't even know what you're saying.
Right.
And and so I was like, oh, okay, I gotta and also personal stories are very powerful. I certainly share here and there personal stories in my education, in the education sessions that I deliver, but I went a step further, which was a little uncomfortable. I can be a little bit more cautious what I share, especially to what will likely be international audience, right? So just thinking about how you can share more of yourself in a way that still feels safe, right? Especially if it's on maybe more sensitive topic. But that really helps people connect by telling a story. And there is one story, and I won't give it away. If you've seen it, if you haven't, I invite you to see it. But where I talk about a particular experience that was pretty tough. So yeah.
Well, I'm going to add that talk to the show notes. You should definitely check it out. It's very good. Kai doesn't talk about it enough.
I know. I can be bad at promotion.
Where can everyone find you on social media, Kai?
Yes, we're on all the different platforms, whether LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Threads.
What if people want to hear a bit more from you in their workplace, Kai?
Absolutely. So we I do keynotes as part of that, kind of take the TEDx talk and take it a step further and continue to unpack it, because usually it's a little bit more time with a keynote, whether it's a half hour or an hour, and you can go further into some of what we talked about here, but more of especially my story, and to illustrate how we can bridge gaps or chasms of understanding about gender, and hopefully bring more people together so that we can, leverage some of the experiences and the different practices related to gender diversity, or really any diversity, that can really help us understand ourselves better and be better allies to other folks. So definitely check out the keynote information package, which we'll link in the show notes if you're curious about that, and definitely happy to talk further if that's something you want to explore engaging us with.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for letting me bully you into talking about this.
Absolutely. Thank you for asking, and for asking questions and helping me explore that further. So I do appreciate it, because of course, with that type of time investment, it is good to share with folks.
Mm-hmm.
And I think people do want to hear it and are curious. And so, just letting folks know a bit of the behind the scenes of how it came to be and what it's about. And hopefully that'll inspire folks, if they haven't already, to go check it out.
Great. Cool. Well, see you next time. Thank
Great.
you.
Thank you so much. Bye for now.
Bye.